I think if you surround yourself with great people, you're going to have a great chance of being successful. And then also just being genuine. I think, especially in today's society and players and, teenagers and young men, I mean, if you're a BSer, they're going to see right through it.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty. I'm here as always with my good friend Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Missouri teams start their season this week, and a week ago we broke down all things KC Mo, from teams with the highest expectations to questions to answer and programs to watch for the future. I highly recommend you check that episode out. This week we'll do the same in Kansas, and we will have a special guest as well in Hutchinson Community College head coach Drew Dallas. The Blue Dragons have reached at least the NJCAA semifinals in 4 of Dallas's 5 years, making the title game 3 times, winning it all twice, including last season. So you won't want to miss that. If you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a review, a 5-star ranking, wherever you get your podcasts like Apple or Spotify. We have our own specific audio channel through KCSN on Apple and Spotify, so you can seek us out there. As always, we appreciate you guys to helping us grow the show and getting us in front of more people like you. Kansas had a chance to show recruits the newly renovated David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium a week ago, and Kansas State and Missouri will have their first chances to welcome recruits for game day visits this week. It's always interesting to see whether there are any surprises, new offers, commitments, which younger players wind up making those trips. So keep an eye out here for that, and we'll get into all that here in the future. Kansas high schools are a week away from starting their 2025 seasons, and this looks like it could be another terrific year in the Sunflower State. Let's get into it with the schools with the highest expectations. On the Missouri side, we said non-Platte County division because those expectations for the returning state champs were sky high. We were both going to pick Platte County. And in Kansas, we weren't allowed to choose a loaded St. Thomas Aquinas program for the one with highest expectations for those same reasons. So, Ryan, with all of that said, who's your non-Aquinas pick for the Kansas team with the highest expectations?
I think Coach Martin has been at Wichita Northwest for 14 years. And I would say outside of maybe the Breece Hall the late Breece Hall era, I think this might be one of the highest expected seasons, most anticipated seasons that Steve Martin has had at Wichita Northwest for the Grizzlies. When you think about this team, 18 total starters return largely on offense. But we've talked about the skill guys a lot, but how about this, Kevin? 4 offensive line starters are back, and all of them are at least 6'3", 275 pounds.
Yeah.
There are colleges out there that would like to have an offensive line that looks like that. They bring in Coach Burke as a new play caller, and he's got a great history, hoping to kind of add a little bit more dynamic element to that while also keeping that run game in play there. And I think on defense, there are some younger athletes there, but still very promising, tons of ability, and again, still a lot of seasoned starters. So when I think about Wichita Northwest, Kevin, it's, they've run into the buzzsaw that is Manhattan and that is Derby. And although those two still very much exist, I think as we enter this season, maybe you could make the argument that neither one of those programs is, cemented as like a no doubt going to get themselves back to the state championship again. If Wichita Northwest can do what they've seem to have done every year in the regular season, right? Just get themselves into the postseason. And if one of those two teams comes to face their way, maybe this is the year that a cool, calm, collected Jalen Mason and that offense is able to get past the hurdle that is Derby, the hurdle that is Manhattan. Because here's my thing, Kevin, and I'll flip it over to you. I feel like even if Wichita Northwest's defense at times this year maybe gives up a play or two, this is going to be a Grizzlies squad that you're not going to want to give the ball back to Jalen Mason in that offense with more than about 5 seconds left on the play clock.
Yeah, 100%. We've had a chance to see Jalen, obviously, multiple times this offseason, and we liked him before we saw him this offseason. Ryan, we've been tracking this kid since he was a freshman, and so we've seen him continue to grow. But one of the things that really stood out is just sort of how in control he is right now. He looks like what you want a Division I / Power 4 prospect at quarterback to look at in terms of the confidence that he plays with, the way that he handles everything. And Ryan, the amazing thing about this team too, I think, is you mentioned the 18 returning starters. Well, this is a team that also has a significant amount of young talent sort of coming up as well. You know, usually you kind of have one or the other, where you either have a roster that returns a whole bunch of guys, or you have a roster where maybe the young guys are starting to kick up and show a little something. Wichita Northwest has both, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, there's a true freshman that we've already mentioned on this show that we will probably be mentioning again as a starter that, again, is not one of the 18 that's accounted for that Wichita Northwest is buzzing about. So, again, they've had pressure at Wichita Northwest in the recent past.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've had the expectation, though, and the bar of like, hey, we think we're going to be really good this year. We think we're going to be really good, and you should be really good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also going to pick a Northwest team, but a slightly different part of the state. I'm going to go with Blue Valley Northwest. And when you talk about the most talented teams, the most stacked teams sort of on the Kansas side of the Kansas City metro area, I think you think of Aquinas, who we talked about already, and you think of Blue Valley Northwest. And that's not to say that there aren't other teams that belong in that mix. We'll talk about a few of those teams here in a little bit. But I think Blue Valley Northwest is a school that you hear about from other coaches, even not just Coach Ryder talking about his program, but when you ask and you say, hey, who's going to be an absolute wagon this year? Blue Valley Northwest is a team that pops up quite a bit. It feels like that talent too is so well spread out. You know, you have guys on both lines that I think are underrated, quite frankly. You know, they've got great size on both lines as well. Tons of skill position talent. I mean, when you look at LJ Bowens running the ball, when you look at Barron Marshall and Aiden McGibney catching the ball, I think they're a little bit better at quarterback than people think. I also think, Ryan, something that people don't talk about with this program, but that I see as a strength, I think this could be one of the best back sevens in the entire state. When you look at that linebacking core, which has kind of star potential players in the 26, 27, and I think 28 classes, and you have some really good defensive backs in that group as well. I know you and I were both fans of Coach Ryder. That staff, they do a great job. You hate to say state title or bust for anybody because so many things can happen in the playoffs, but the expectations are and should be sky high around a program that went 7-4 a year ago, but is still only 4 years removed from winning it all.
Yeah, and, you know, we talk a lot about Barron Marshall. We talk about Aiden McGibney and some of those guys, but, I mean, they've got several more. One name that, you know, when you talk about high expectations, right, and if they can get to, you know, the playoff brackets and maybe there is a tight ball game, they've got a place kicker named Trace Rudd that is phenomenal, like 5-star specialist in the country. So, I mean, to your point, like they are loaded at every position beyond kind of the names that you know. I'm a little skeptical. We'll see what happens with quarterback and offensive line. But, you know, Coach Ryder and this program has proven at this point that that's on their resume. Like they're going to develop it. They're going to find guys and they're going to be good. So I think this is a solid pick from you and one that, you know, we weren't allowed to pick Aquinas, but I also think if you were to question Aquinas on maybe who they're looking at in the EKL as, you know, a suitor that could knock them off the pedestal, I would venture to guess Blue Valley Northwest would come up quite a bit.
For sure, for sure. So those are our teams, not Aquinas division, with the highest expectations. Always have to add that in. But Ryan, let's move on to Kansas teams that maybe deserve a little bit more buzz or a little bit more expectation than what they're getting right now. Who's your pick in that category?
I kind of went back and forth on this one, and it wound up being two teams that are interchangeable, one of which is a Sunflower League team that I'll get to after the break. But I ended up going 4A here, Kevin, with the Ottawa Cyclones.
Yeah.
The more you start to look at Ottawa, and Coach Alexander down there is a vet among vets. I mean, he's been around the block and has had some really good teams that have gone a ways in the state championship bracket. You think back to when he was at Topeka with Kai Thomas and some of the great teams they had there. I think he's going to get a taste of that again this year. And I think this is a program, and specifically this year's roster, that is so heavy in the senior class that deserves a little bit more discussion. You've got 6 players that were either first or second team All Frontier league that are returning for this group. You've got that great kind of 1-2 or 1-2-3 punch with the quarterback Hall. And obviously you've got the wide receivers in Sims and McCullough. 3 losses last year. I dove into that were by less than 10 points. And so it's a wide open 4A East. We saw a Bishop Miege team come out of there last year that many expected not to be there, and they got there. I think when you look at the Frontier League, Lewisburg is kind of having to reload, and up and down, again, the east side of 4A, things are really set up, I think, for Ottawa to do really nice things this year with, again, a senior class that's been playing varsity for a while. They've been playing football together for a long time. They've got a lot of guys at key positions that I think are difference makers at the 4A level. Here's the thing with Ottawa for me, Kevin, and I'm curious kind of your thoughts on this, is I think one of the reasons they don't get a lot of buzz is because they are sheltered a little bit just outside kind of the suburbs, right? The Kansas City bubble, that they're kind of often forgotten, right?
Yeah.
And I think on the positive, that could work to their advantage, because I think that you could go all year with Ottawa not getting the love, and those guys kind of where that flame just starts to grow a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more, where they're going, we want that. Like we feel like we are as good. We can't wait to show that we are that level. The thing that Coach Alexander's got to deal with is then not having that bite them, right? Where you start to play out of yourself when you do get that opportunity to test yourself against a team that you've kind of had circled and you've kind of been eyeing, where again, you're not playing Ottawa football. That's kind of the balance that I think Coach Alexander has to juggle. If he can keep them kind of burning with that fire, but still keep their identity, this is a team that I think has the roster to really make some waves this year in a way that Ottawa hasn't in many, 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 many years.
Yeah, and I think that league's a really underrated league in terms of getting you battle tested for the playoffs, because that would have been my other concern, is just sort of, hey, if you're outside of this bubble and you're really good, you know, is there a chance that you go through and you're not getting tested in the way that you need to get tested? You're not facing adversity the way. I don't think that's going to be the case, to your point. I think that Ottawa is going to be tested through the regular season. I do think that they're going to come out and be a really good team. And I'm right there with you in that I think that because maybe that league isn't looked at, and I think a lot of it is just unfamiliarity with that league, with Ottawa, you know, so on and so forth. If you're covering the KC metro area, that's not necessarily a stop that you're making regularly. And so I could see, I'm right there with you in that I absolutely could see that being a benefit for them, where they enter the playoffs, you know, kind of with a little bit of that chip on the shoulder. The key is not letting that chip become a boulder in the wrong way. I am going to go ahead.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the Ottawa offense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am going to go ahead and pick a team that feels so unfamiliar for this category of needing more buzz, Ryan, and that's Mill Valley. How about a team that competes for state titles every single year, wins pretty much every single year, and yet, for whatever reason, this season, Ryan, I think it feels like there's not really a whole lot of buzz about Mill Valley. the Jaguars were a little more vulnerable a year ago. They fell short and by a point to Aquinas in the playoffs. And I think that this is a squad that's maybe a little bit better and more talented than maybe people give them credit for. I think people saw Jaden Woods and some of those guys move on and said, okay, Mill Valley, that took a bite out of that roster. But Ryan, I'm a Blake J fan. He's going to be running and handing the ball off to Reggie Reese and Max Piva behind LaMarcus Barber, who we've discussed previously, maybe the best offensive lineman in the entire state. Defensively, don't sleep on how much a healthy Hayden Heller could help those guys up front. There's a solid 2027 class breaking in as well. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if maybe they get a bump or two in the road during the regular season, but Coach Appleby has those guys playing their best football when it absolutely matters the most.
You gave me the definition the explanation that I was looking for, because I got to be honest, when I saw Mill Valley's logo pop up here, I was like, where is Kevin going with this? But again, I think when you put it in context of like previous Mill Valley schools, even though they're still going to be a preseason favorite in the Sunflower League, in the Metro, in the state at the 5A level, there is something about this offseason and this summer where they're just not maybe being thought of the way that they have in the past in terms of being like impenetrable. I think for whatever reason, there is some belief around the Metro that maybe they can get got, and that maybe that the shine is wearing off, so to speak. We will see. But again, history has proven that you shouldn't probably look at Mill Valley in that light. But again, we'll see if 2025 is different.
Yeah, we've talked about them having maybe one of the best strength and conditioning programs in the state, and they're always going to be really physical. They're going to have a great running game. They're probably going to be really good defensively. And so it's not necessarily like, hey, this is the most underrated team in the history of mankind, but more just sort of, this is the quietest offseason I can remember surrounding Mill Valley in a really long time. And I'm not sure it should be as quiet as it is. And so I'm interested to see, is this team a legitimate, threat to Aquinas in 5A? I think that this could be a terrific team to watch this year. So we will go ahead and start hitting on more programs, continuing our look at Kansas high school football right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
We started our breakdown of the Kansas high school football season before the break with teams with the highest expectations and squads that maybe deserve a little bit more buzz than they're getting. Let's shift gears here a little bit and look at which programs might have some questions to answer. Ryan, you actually went with a recent state title winner with your choice.
Yeah, I did. Gardner Edgerton. And again, with Gardner, they're a program that's, they've proven themselves. So again, when we say questions to answer, it's not like they can't answer them.
Yes.
But when you look at them on paper this year, Coach Owen and his staff, I think, at least from what we know, they might be feeling great based on what they know from within the program. But on the outside, you've got Sayer Padilla coming back. You've got Porter Swaim on offense. And you and I both like what we've seen from kind of an emerging underclassman that will become an upperclassman in Penn McCall on defense. Then what? Only five total starters are back. And, among the guys that they got to replace, quarterback Braven Powell, no Caleb Dewey is the kind of the quarterback on defense. So they've only had one losing record since Coach Owen arrived, and they've had back-to-back 12-win seasons. But again, kind of on paper, I think the work might be cut out for Gardner Edgerton this year to kind of live up to that kind of status.
I like that pick, especially since it felt like Braven Powell was one of the most clutch players in the state a year ago as well. Whenever Gardner needed a big play, just had to have it, he showed up. I'm going to go with Manhattan. Again, like you said, I think the likelihood is the Indians will have another strong team under Coach Schartz. But man, was Carter Aslan good a year ago? Man, was Trey Hoover good a year ago? Man, was that senior class overall ever good a year ago? Remember, those guys went an incredible 34-3 over the last 3 years. Look, we love J.J. Dunnigan. He's our top player in the state for 2026. We've talked about Kamario Davis running the ball. Evan Middleton was one of kind of our breakout players this offseason. But without Aslan throwing the ball, who's the quarterback? If it's a guy like JJ just thinking, hey, you might put the ball in the hands of your best athlete, can he throw the ball well enough to keep teams from stacking the box? Remember that doing something like that also takes away Manhattan's best receiver because JJ's not throwing it to himself. The Indians should be good. They should probably be really good. Will they be good enough to win a state title? I think there are some questions to answer from that point. Nothing makes for a more fun Friday night than a great game featuring two strong teams and a raucous atmosphere. So here's the question. What's your must-have ticket for the upcoming season?
So I debated, and there was a thought for a split second of mine that I have this really just odd gut feeling that Shawnee Heights and Topeka Seaman on October 10th could be a barn burner, which it has been virtually every year in the last decade outside of last year when Seaman won by 25. And the United Kansas Conference is going to be wide open this year. So there was a thought of me that was going that way. And then Kevin, I was like, beat my, mallet on the head because I'm like, stop overthinking it. It's October 17th and it's the rematch, the revenge game, Great Bend at Hayes.
Yeah.
When you talk about matchups, this is absolutely the ticket I want in my pocket. You've got an opportunity to see, obviously, a player that many believe, and you and I will try and iron out, could be and maybe the best player in the state as a senior. When you talk about Ian Premer that's headed to Notre Dame, you also get the recruiting, plateful, which is Cooper Omott playing defense and offense for Great Bend. Gus Corsair, the starting center for Hayes. So from a recruiting standpoint, it's must watch. But then also, again, you've got Hayes wasn't supposed to beat Great Bend a year ago. And in fact, in the regular season, Tony Crow's team did not. But then they come in, they shock the world in the second round of the 5A playoffs. They up in Great Bend. Guys like Ian Premer have been stewing on that for an entire year. Now they get to go up to Hayes. They get the opportunity to play a spoiler. It's late in the year. 5A seeding could be at stake here. And I believe Hayes is opening up like a new facility this season. So it won't be like their first home game there, but like could be one of their big first home environment matchups there. So you can't go wrong with that ticket. And I would encourage anybody that's within driving distance of Hayes, which includes us in Kansas City, to be quite honest, make that trek because I think it'll be worth the price of admission.
Yeah, to that point, that's not just a great pick, but Ryan, one that at least as of right now, we're planning on going to ourselves. So we are pretty fired up about that one. We've talked in the past about how there's maybe a little bit more charged atmosphere when the parochial schools square off, and more specifically, the Catholic schools square off. And in the case of St. Thomas Aquinas and St. James Academy, you have two schools in a September 12th contest between two teams that met in the 5A semifinals a year ago. This year's version will be at Aquinas look, not only do I think these two teams are pretty good, there's an inherent toughness that you have with both programs, an inherent discipline that you have in both programs, which are so well coached by Coach Driley and Coach Radke. It's so easy to see why there's a rivalry there. And there could be another meeting between these two teams in November. So this could be a preview of a game with a potential state title berth on the line. And when you add all those factors in, that's a game that I think is going to be must watch. You're going to have Aquinas' flex bone against the air raid at St. James, and I think it's going to be a terrific contest. We have a couple categories left, both pertaining to Kansas high school football and the stock market. So, Ryan, if you could buy stock in any Kansas program right now, who would it be?
So this is where I was talking about earlier. There was a Sunflower League team that I think was interchangeable with Ottawa in terms of whether you wanted to buy now or, think that they needed to be discussed a little bit more. And I went with buying now, Mark Simoneau and the Shawnee Mission East Lancers. And the more I think about it, I think you look at what they did last year, which was very solid. I think that they have just kind of run into, some bad bracket play at times, like where they were seated. They ran into some tough teams, but every coach that I've talked to said that Shawnee Mission East has been a tough out. They run kind of a physical brand, and obviously their style is one with kind of that flex bone, triple option kind of thing that is a little bit challenging at times for teams to adjust to on the fly. Then you start to look deeper at Shawnee Mission East this year. They've got Jack Reeves back at quarterback, solid dual threat kid that had 22 total touchdowns a year ago. Physically, this is a senior class that's very imposing. You've got Brock Ryder, who's a kid that we probably should be talking about more as a defensive lineman. Paxton and Quentin Oaks, the Oaks twins are that name I think will grow and generate this season. And Aiden Mooney, and there's several others at Shawnee Mission East that I think have a chance to kind of raise their stock this year.
Love the Shawnee Mission East pick. That's a program that's typically been at or near the bottom of the Sunflower League, but it really looks like they're starting to turn things around. I'm going to go with Lawrence Free State. We talked earlier about some of the most talented teams in the state, and I think you have to put Coach Stewart's Firebirds on that list as well. Last year's team was pretty solid. They went 6-4, but they had some injuries that maybe kept them from reaching their full potential. This year, you have not just Braden Wilmus at one tackle spot who's headed to Clemson, but his younger brother, Reese Wilmus, is one of the state's top tackles in 2028 and already has some Power 4 offers. You have a physical runner at quarterback who I think throws it maybe a little bit better than people think in Finn Moore. Madden Brenningham is a guy that we've talked about a lot on this show, is one of our favorite athletes in that 2027 class. Ethan Prescott is a playmaker. Some of those guys are two-way guys who also excel on defense. And then you have defensive end /linebacker pieces like Draven Samuel and Garrison Otis. Coach Stewart has talked about maybe not having the number of kids, the program depth that they've had at times this year. But honestly, I'm not sure there are too many teams with that kind of front-end talent. And when you look at some of those guys being younger guys that I think are going to continue to improve over the course of the season, Free State could be a team you don't want to see in the state playoffs this year. I definitely think they'll be better than last year's sort of 6-4 team that was solid, but ultimately a little bit limited. Let's go now with our last category, investing stock. This is a program on the rise that could absolutely find success this year, but this is a little bit more about finding the program's footing for the future being on pretty solid ground. So who is your pick?
I toyed with a couple here, Kevin. First off, before we get to yours, I really like your pick. They came to mind for me. Free State came to mind for me. St. James came to mind for me. Yep. But I ultimately, again, mallet to the head, like stop overthinking it. Go with the team that we've kind of been talking about this offseason, started to generate that steam late last year in the 5A playoffs. Gene Weir and Blue Valley North.
Yep.
The Mustangs, look, I get it. Like, there's a lot of questions of like, how long is Coach Weir going to be there? was it just a flash in the pan kind of fluke thing that happened late October last year, early November last year? And then, they weren't great, at least in the 7-on-7 tournament that we were at Mill Valley. Like, they didn't fare as well, but they flash, Kevin. Like,
Yes.
there are kids on that team that you're like, Braxton Wagner at quarterback here beyond this year, Aiden Bolton at linebacker, Henry Hauser on defense, Caden Augustus, the running back, is back. We didn't even get to see some of those kids, or like an Elijah Shaw, the promising like 6'9" tackle. That's Aiden Shaw, the former Missouri basketball player's younger brother. Like, there are guys on that roster that, again, I just think when you start to think about the turnover that happens in the EKL is always going to be challenging. I'm not saying that Blue Valley North's going to go out there and just win it based on the fact that they had some experienced players. But I do think that that's going to benefit them in the long haul. The amount of proven time that those kids have gotten on the varsity level last year, that they could get this year, that they're going to get next year. Like, when you start thinking about 2026, 2027, if these pieces are still in place at Blue Valley North, I don't care who the head coach is, the Mustangs are going to be rolling again.
Look, when you're projecting into the future, having an elite young quarterback can solve all kinds of ills. And the program that I picked also has a pretty good young quarterback and some good young talent overall. Eudora went 4-5 last year. And if that doesn't knock your socks off, I understand. But the Cardinals did that while starting a whopping 4 freshmen, all in key spots. That included guys like Cy Thomas, the younger brother of former blue chip recruit and now Washburn star Kai Thomas. He was at quarterback. Cy is a really good multi-sport athlete, projects to be a really dynamic signal caller over the rest of his high school career. His starting left tackle, that guy was a freshman too, Carter Lewis, who we saw out on the camp circuit a few times, Ryan, this spring and summer. Both of those players could be among the better prospects in the state in that 2028 class. And as those freshmen and the rest of that roster continue to develop and even just grow into their bodies, really, I mean, these are guys that couldn't drive a year ago. It wouldn't be a surprise to see them bring that Eudora program up with them.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we talked about with the Frontier League, like Lewisburg's reloading this year. I mentioned it earlier. Ottawa will reload after this year. Like, things shape up nicely for the Cardinals. And again, that is a team that will be physically and mentally developed kind of beyond their peers when you start thinking about 2026 and 2027.
I agree. Hutchinson Community College head coach Drew Dallas will join us here on the show right after the break.
What's good, everybody? It is Benny Heiss, KCSN betting analyst, and I just want to let you all know that it's okay. You can take a slow, deep breath. Inhale and breathe out with one word: football. You feeling it? Yeah? Did you take that in? That sweet, sweet scent of grass and pigskin in? I'm ready. I hope you're ready too, because we're going to have an absolutely awesome season once again together. And especially for all of you in the state of Missouri, get your popcorn, get your phones ready, because the wait is almost over. You can taste it. It's coming, people. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming. You say, show me? I say state. Later this football season, everything that you love about playing on DraftKings Sportsbook, sides, totals, spreads, props, same-game parlays, you name it, DraftKings Sportsbook is going to elevate your already great game day experience here with KCSN. And even if you don't get in by kickoff, no sweat, besides the promos on DraftKings that they offer as well, there's live in-game betting, payouts, faster than Xavier Worthy hauling down a bomb from 15 on the sidelines, all right from the comfort of your phone, wherever, whenever. You'll be betting with a top-rated sportsbook that is safe, secure, and trusted by millions of Americans across the country. Now, here's what you do. Follow your guy. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Be sure to use code KCSN as you get ready for sports betting to launch here in the state of Missouri. You're going to be the first in line for exclusive promos, can't miss offers, much, much more. It's code KCSN. That is KCSN in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook, subject to regulatory licensing requirements.
This is the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. We're joined by Hutchinson Community College coach Drew Dallas. Coach, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, happy to hop on with you guys. Appreciate you having me and looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, first off, Coach, you guys won the national title a year ago, which was your second there. You start off this season number one in the polls. So how do you feel about your team heading into this year?
Well, we're excited. I mean, we got a good group of guys back, and you know they've worked hard all off season, done everything we've asked, and they've been a fun group to coach up to this point. So, you know, fall camp's been long for us. We've been rolling for a while now, and still have a week and a half left to our first game. But you know, we're excited to just get on the field and see somebody else, kind of see where we're at and gauge kind of where we're at as a football team. But we're excited about the talent we have and how they're working. So look forward to getting this thing rolling here soon.
Coach, I was going through some prep, going through, the Jayhawk conference a little bit before you jumped on, and realized your sixth season, right, as a head coach at Hutch, and you're like double the longest tenured of the next longest tenured coach. Did you ever see that coming 6 seasons ago, that you would think like just 6 seasons in, you would be the vet, of the conference from a head coaching standpoint?
No, not at all. I mean, shoot, I still feel like the new guy at times, just because you're always learning something new on the job. And, 6 years is still pretty young in a head coaching career. But Hutch has been a great spot to myself and our staff and my family. So, it's an easy place to want to stay. And, when you're winning ball games and enjoying the journey each and every day with your team, I mean, you kind of get caught up in just the day-to-day grind and don't really realize how long you've been here going at it. It's just try to find a way to rinse and repeat and win another ball game each and every week.
College football fans sort of become junior college fans when it comes time to help fill out their roster, and they start looking for guys who could maybe help their programs win. Who are some guys that you have on your roster that maybe people should pay attention to, where you say, hey, this guy's really good and could be playing at a high level next year?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've got a handful of them across the board, offensively, defensively, and special teams. For the past, I think, 3-4 years now, we've had over 30 guys, signed to FBS schools. And so that's always really fun, just watching their development through the course of their career here. But, I think the first name that comes to mind is DeMarcus Johnson, a defensive end that we have. He's the number one junior college recruit in the country in a lot of publications. And, you can tell by looking at him on the field, he's 6'7", 275, 280 pounds right now, and just moves really well. And so he checks a lot of boxes with the eye test. And, I really think along our defensive front right now is probably where we have the most depth that's just kind of eye-popping off the charts. We've got 4 or 5 guys with Power 5 offers right now up along that defensive front, and really truly think there's probably a couple more in there as well as we get going. But Darius Wiley's another tall 6'7", 255-pound DN he redshirted for us last year as a true freshman, but he's playing really, really well in the spring and had a great fall camp. Jalen Allen's another one, 6'6", 240. He was a kid from Little Rock, Arkansas that came to us, 205 pounds. But is really grinded in the off season in the weight room, and his stock's going up. And then Jeffrey Manns, KJ Henson, 2 interior guys that played a lot of reps for us last year at 3 Tech, and expect them to be really good players. And then some local flavor, Tavion Bell Robinson from Olathe East.
Yeah,
he's 6'4.5", 305 pounds, moves extremely well, is really, really strong. And he's playing nose for us right now and having a great fall camp. So, he's a guy that already has some offers at the Power 4 level and is picking up a lot of interest even before we get started on game day. But I think when you look at our roster right now, I mean, that defensive front has got a lot of highly touted recruits, I think. And then we've got some linebackers, Tegan Haynes from McPherson, transferred to us from Garden City. Big long kid that's put some good weight on. He's up to 215 right now, just a rangy guy that can run and he's a playmaker. Tyler Lassiter, another linebacker. And then, a good handful of guys in the back end. Earl Parker, DJ Jester, MJ Graham, Rayshawn Reynolds, all those guys have some offers already. So, on the defensive side, we're going to play a lot of guys. We got a lot of really good depth. And at the junior college level, when you have those guys, you want to make sure you're playing them, keeping them fresh. But there's also that part where we understand that they got to play reps to get evaluated. And, it helps us when it comes to winning games because you can play guys and keep them fresh throughout the course of the year. It's a long season. Keep them healthy and limit some of those things. But just the depth alone to let them go out there and play and get game tape has been really, really fun to kind of watch, as we've been going throughout fall camp and evaluating it really develop.
Well, unlike maybe some other JUCOs around the country, you've been blessed with the way that you've evaluated and the way that guys now are coming to you. They want to play at Hutch. That maybe true freshmen aren't as needed right away. But I am curious, even if you don't anticipate them being huge factors this season, how excited were you to get one of Kevin and I's favorite duos and Braven Powell and Tevin Gassaway? And, how have you seen them come along just in the short couple weeks and months that they've been on campus?
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun to get those guys in here and watch them develop. Braven's coming from a triple option offense, and now he's transitioning at that quarterback position to more of a college-oriented offense, spread the football, and ask him to do different things that maybe he wasn't asked to do in high school. I mean, he was a playmaker, right? And Gardner Edgerton won a lot of ball games doing what they do, and Coach has a winning formula there that's unquestioned. But at this level, we're asking him to do some different things. And so there's been a learning curve, but I've been really pleased with his progress throughout the summer and fall camp. I mean, he's got the talent and he's got the skill set without question. His playmaking ability and athleticism, really sets him apart when he's able to, slow the game down a little bit and think about the execution and continue to develop some mechanics in the passing game. I'm really excited about his future. But we've seen him make huge growth, throughout fall camp. I mean, he and I were just talking yesterday in the office, and we kind of went through a mini camp of 2 weeks, and it was pretty easy. Then there weren't a whole lot of bullets flying, and then you get a defense in front of you, and those first couple of days, you're sitting there like, man, what is going on? Things are moving fast here, and I got a lot to think about. But after kind of that first week of being involved in it, we've really seen progress and growth in him, and he's got a lot of gamer to him too, and that's been fun to see in our scrimmage situations. So Tevin, I mean, he's a great athlete with elite size. He battled a broken finger right when he got here, so he's been a little bit limited in some of those receiver reps. But this week's kind of been the first week he's been out there running around, and I mean, you can see it from day one when he's out there on the field. Like, he's got a great frame, elite speed, and I think the sky's the limit for him. It'd just be kind of catching back up to speed after the injury and getting going again. So I think Braven and Tevin were thrown over the summer, and a broken finger happened between them. So they were talking about that today at practice. But we're glad he's back healthy and ready to go, and excited to see his progress over the next couple months as well.
Yeah, Tevin's dad, Byron, was actually one of the elite recruits that KU has gotten. It was just before, I think, recruiting database era, but he would have been basically the equivalent of like a top 100 type of guy, and was a big get for Kansas, was a really good athlete. So he comes by that talent pretty naturally.
Good genes. Yeah, I can't coach those things up, so it's good to have that background for sure.
Well, Coach, you're someone who's always placed an emphasis on recruiting the state of Kansas. And when we have players on here, we like to ask them for sort of their favorite spots in their hometowns. You go all over the place. And so I want to ask you, I ran into you this year at Jake Sharp's Combine in Lindsborg, which kind of spawned the question. But what are maybe a couple hidden jewels around the state? Either small towns that you really enjoy, or even like restaurants and places to hang out, like Old Stuga, in Lindsborg.
Yeah, I stopped by the Old Stuga in Lindsborg after Sharp's camp. That's a good little spot. And being a KW grad, I hadn't been in there before, or had been some years. I wasn't welcomed in there for a long time, with that Kansas Wesleyan Bethany rival. But they didn't know who I was this time, so let me in the bar, I guess. But that's a great spot there. And, from Hutch, it's a relatively close drive. But really just more than anything, you like getting out to some of these small towns in the state of Kansas. I mean, I remember early in my coaching career getting up to Smith Center and just, everything that comes with that and the aura around it. And just, getting into those high schools and firsthand seeing those guys and meeting the coaches is special. I mean, there's a lot of really good schools across the state. And I think when you get to those little bitty towns, though, and you find, hey, there's a good athlete here, and you get out and you meet the coach and talk to him, and, you're walking the halls of a little bitty high school. Those are pretty special. I don't know if there's one town, that sticks out in particular, but, I know here in Hutch, we love to go eat at Roy's Barbecue. Roy's is kind of off the map, and, it's a really good local barbecue joint that if you don't get there before 1, you might not get some meat on your plate. But Roy's is a good one, and RB Drive-In, one of the oldest diners I think in the state, and got a great burger. So there's some good spots, and I think when you go to those, you go to those new towns each time you're out and about, you always got to stop. And if you're short on time, there's nothing better than a slice of Casey's pizza, and you can find those around the state all over. So that's always a good one.
So, Coach, we've got current coaches that listen to the show, possibly players that will aspire one day to be coaches. So you as not only a successful head coach, but also the son of a successful head coach, this is a great question for you. And it could be loaded with answers here, but for those out there that don't know this incredible stat, I mentioned that you're going into your, 6th season as head coach at Hutch. The amount of games you've lost, one hand, 5. So what is the biggest key to being the leader of a program and only losing 5 games over 6 years?
Well, I think number one, it's surrounding yourself with good people, and luckily we've got a great administration here at Hutch, and hiring an awesome coaching staff that's, enjoys being here. I think making it a place where there's some good balance is important with that, where they enjoy being here and going to work each and every day. But then recruiting the right type of player and person to your football team too. You can't just go after the best athlete all the time. It's got to be a right fit for your culture. And it all goes back to just surrounding yourself with the right people. I mean, I don't have every answer at all, but I'm willing to listen, willing to put our brains together and try to find out what the best answer is for our program at that time. And I think, understanding that part of it is collectively, if you got a good unit together, whether it's coaches, players, team, admin, whatever that is, you got to be willing to listen, and you got to be able to take people's advice from time to time, because you're not going to have all the answers when you sit in a head coaching seat. And you got to be willing to listen and just kind of adapt and overcome. And, when I look back at my career, when I got started, we were right in the middle of COVID, and I've told people time and time again, it's really a blessing in disguise. It was a stressful time, but it also taught me to adapt on the fly, and really had to, kind of look at, hey, keep the important things, number one, and make sure you're just trying to make the best decision for your team possible. And, I think if you surround yourself with great people, you're going to have a great chance of being successful. And then also just being genuine. I think, especially in today's society and players and, teenagers and young men, I mean, if you're a BSer, they're going to see right through it. They're familiar with it. And I think being genuine with them up front, I don't think they want people that are going to blow a lot of smoke. They want to hear it the right way. And sometimes those are tough conversations to have. Sometimes they're tough to hear, but you got to have them. And I think once guys get through the emotion of some of those conversations or those kind of things, I think just they understand, hey, coach is being genuine. He truly cares about me as an individual. These are truly the things I need to work on. It helps them self-reflect and correct some things. And I think it helps them develop just as a student athlete in general.
Coach, we've had KU and K-State staff on the show. We had a group of 5 coach come on the show. We've now had multiple Division II coaches come on the show. And we've asked them all about how sort of the NIL era and where things are at in college football has impacted their lives. And so from your standpoint, either junior college, or specifically at Hutch, how has like the current era in college football impacted what you do?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, there's so many levels to it that, it's hard to kind of peel them all back and understand which ones are, the most important or the ones you see on a daily basis. But, at the junior college level, I think it's a pretty pure game still. We don't have the NIL money that's hitting the pockets of our players like they do at the FBS level. And so, our guys are striving to get those opportunities still. And they are getting them on the way out. And so I think more than anything, we really see the NIL portion affecting our players and our team as they're getting recruited and throughout the recruiting process. And so, but it's really changed the way that we've had to approach recruiting a little bit for them. Their timeline, when they're leaving, why they're leaving, not just chasing the dollar amount, but still making sure that we're educating them on, hey, this has got to be a good fit for you to be successful, and start thinking long-term as opposed to just the short-term side of things. When there's money being thrown around and it's up front in your face, in the recruiting process, you still got to look, long-term goals and those kind of things. And so, we've tried to educate them as much as we can, whether that's having, NFLPA agents that are certified come in and visit with our team and just talk about the process and kind of educate them on it. A lot of times it's just us working through some things with them together throughout the recruiting process. And then on the flip side of that, because of NIL, those FBS and particularly the Power 4 level has really changed how they're recruiting. They're paying for players and wanting guys that already are a proven commodity. And so experience is number one. They want to, spend their funds and their investment on guys with a proven track record. And whether that's at the junior college level with game film or whether that's from, an FCS or a group of 5 school, because of that, we're seeing a lot more high school kids that are kind of left out to dry a little bit, and not having the same amount of opportunities. So we've really kind of shifted our focus to a lot of high school development. We're recruiting the heck out of high schools. We don't take a lot of bounce backs anymore. We'll have a handful of them each and every year, but each and every year our best players are guys that have been involved in our program for a year, 2 years, guys that have developed. And so you're getting a lot better quality of high school recruit because there's just not as many opportunities for them, at the 4-year level anymore because people are paying for transfers, and that's the way they're structuring their roster. So junior college has always been about development, and that's what it still is. And so that part of it, the day-to-day operation and those kind of things really hasn't changed. But I guess the target pool of recruits, it's a little bit bigger for us. Whether it's a qualifier, non-qualifier, there's just a lot more out there right now. And then, certainly the guys that come through the program, they invest in it and they make it, and they're on their way out the door. We're seeing them, take advantage of a lot of those NIL opportunities because they're getting game film, they're getting playing reps, and now they're the proven commodities that a lot of those big time schools are going to recruit. So that part of it's been fun, but also trying to keep their best interest at heart and educate them on the process and making sure they're putting themselves in a good position as well.
Coach, on the same topic, staying on this topic, I think it's interesting that like nowadays you've got the kind of major, Power 4, FBS, FCS level coaches that are kind of having to figure out how to mesh and mold rosters together in a single off season because granted, K-State and KU, not so much, but I mean, you go across the country. I mean, it wasn't, but a year ago, Colorado had an influx where like 75% of their roster, is new like overnight. And they're trying to, again, mesh all these things together with all these newcomers like over and over and over every season. And I started thinking about it this afternoon before you came on. I was like, the JUCO coaches are probably going, we've been doing this for years. Clearly, you've had success doing it for years. What is the secret to success when you have to, again, wave goodbye to a lot of kids and then also bring in a wave of newcomers that maybe have never played together, and yet you're consistently playing for national championships?
Yeah, I mean, roster management right now in college football across the board is probably one of the toughest things, and I think any Division I coach would probably echo that. And to that point, kind of getting off topic here a little bit, but we've seen a lot more guys getting offered late in the process, late in the summer. Rosters used to be set in May, at the latest. And now you're seeing guys coming in and offering guys in August sometimes, and so it's crazy. It's a crazy game for sure. And roster management is really tough. But I think number one is you got to understand that roster management's ongoing. And so when you're building a roster, you got to project on, hey, we could lose this guy. This guy could be back. We've got to protect ourselves a little bit and kind of build your recruiting platform with that in mind. You got to have some faith that there's always going to be some natural attrition as well. And so, I think that part of it, of getting a roster management, there's a lot to it. But I think once you get them on campus, football is football, and you got to get them going the right direction. You got to get them lined up and all those things. So I think understanding, how to get them in the right spots. You got to have a system that's user friendly, essentially, to where you're not asking them to make a ton of checks at the line of scrimmage for a quarterback or those kind of things. Those are nobody at any level as a true freshman is going to come in and operate like a fourth or a fifth year senior. And so if you're counting on a guy that's new to your system or, new to college football, I mean, you just got to be willing to sacrifice some of those things schematically so they can play fast. And I think kind of how you formulate your offense, your defense, make it to where it's easy to learn. I think you got to be a great teacher, number one. How you teach, what different instruction types you have. Everybody's different. You're going to have to spend more time walking through things with guys. You're going to have to spend, some guys, it's more about spending a lot of time in the meeting room on the whiteboard or on video. Some guys just need a ton of reps. And so managing, rep and workload and trying to figure out who learns in what way, you just got to be flexible, and I think if you can be flexible and have a friendly offense defense that kids can learn, they can pick it up pretty quick, and all college football players love playing college football. It's important to them for the most part, and they love to learn it. And so not being afraid to throw more at them than maybe you think they can handle either, just to kind of see what they can pick up on. And then, like how we install our offense and defense. I mean, we throw a lot at them early, we call it whole part whole, and it goes back to teaching philosophies that I learned, in college and in my teacher education degree. Is, hey, throw it all at them early, see what sticks, come back, refine it as you go. And you got to just be willing to coach on the fly sometimes, and so I think that, along with establishing a great culture and relationship with guys early in the process, we talked about being genuine, as a coach. That's super important to our staff, and being real with guys. And that doesn't start when they get on campus. That starts in the recruiting process, and so I think it's easy for them to invest in you early in the process. You're able to form a genuine relationship through the recruiting process. And so when you look back over time, even though that kid's only been on campus for a couple weeks, there's a relationship that's gone back for 6-12 months, and it's just a lot easier to get buy-in from guys when you're genuine and they know that relationship's real from the get-go. We talk about, we're not trying to hype guys up and sell them on hype in the recruiting process. We're going to be real with them, and I think sometimes when you're selling hype, you're selling a dream, and then they get on campus and it's completely different. Well, there's going to be a struggle for, a long time for that guy to trust you as a coach. And that's really when you need them to be invested into what you're coaching, what you're preaching, and asking them to do, so you can maximize the time with them there before you really get rolling and on game day.
Coach, last question for me. It's kind of a follow-up to Ryan's thing. When you hear coaches at sort of smaller colleges or Division II colleges even talk about their recruiting pitch, it sounds a lot like a junior college pitch now. Hey, come here, ball out for 2 years. If you're good enough, you'll have a chance to elevate your status and go where you think you belong. And so my question kind of relates to that, but how important is it for sort of this potential rule where junior college eligibility wouldn't count against your 4 years? How important would that to be to sort of preserve junior college in its own sort of box that differentiates it from, Washburn or Emporia State coming in with that same pitch and being able to say, hey, you can come here, get game film, move up to wherever you want to go.
Yeah, we see that a ton. I think if that rule does pass, and there's a lot of different caveats to that, I think, the 5-year clock and all these other things that are kind of tied into it. The NCAA has not given any direction on how that's going to be viewed in the future yet. So we're all kind of sitting and waiting on how that'll come down. I do think, it's good for junior college football in the grand scheme of things, whether they go for a 5-for-5 rule or whether, junior college doesn't count against you necessarily as you move on to the 4-year. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but I think either of those two things would be huge positives for junior college athletics in general. But, I think the one thing the junior college offers that no Division II or FCS school that's using that as a recruiting pitch that, can really provide is the fact that, hey, we're playing with just freshmen and sophomores, and game tape is what matters as you're moving on to these bigger schools. Just like we talked about earlier, they're going to invest in game reps and game film. And so when you're coming in as a true freshman and you're coming into a junior college program, like, it's expected for you to play in your first or second year. There's no questions about it. You have to. I mean, otherwise you're out the door. At the 4-year level, the Division II school that's using that as a recruiting pitch. I mean, how many true freshmen are actually on the field on game day? And the answer is not many. Because they're taking guys out of the portal that are 4th and 5th year seniors. And so they're doing the same thing on the back end that those big time Division I schools are doing. And so I think that's really where junior college is. That opportunity to play early is true. It's real. It's not a hope. You don't have to beat out a 4th, 5th year senior that's been in the program for 4 or 5 years. You don't have to beat out a 4th year senior that's bouncing back from University of Kansas or Kansas State. I mean, hey, you're coming in and you're playing with guys in your class and you're getting game film. And that's really what you got to have to move on to the next level. So, I think we combat that a little bit in the recruiting process. That those 4-year schools that are using that same, that pitch and selling themselves as a junior college, they're still walking through our doors and recruiting our guys. And so there's a different dynamic there. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think the facts always matter. And, it's easy for us to point out, hey, look at that school and tell me how many guys they sent to the FBS level in last year's recruiting class, and the reality behind it is it's a very slim margin of kids, and I think for us, when we can put on paper and show them the names and roster numbers and all that stuff, and it's 30 plus kids a year, there's a big difference there. And so, it's just, it's a platform that's unique in junior college football because you're playing with other kids your age and you're playing against really good competition each and every week. And, those 4-year coaches understand that.
Well, Coach, thanks so much for stopping by. If there's a parent or player watching this who wants to know more about your program, how can they reach out to you guys?
Yeah, best thing is, our coaches are active on social media, so shoot us a DM on X or Twitter and, send us your film on email or whatnot, and we're going to make sure we get it evaluated, especially across the state of Kansas. We've got 52 guys, from the state of Kansas on our roster this year, and that's been really fun. Like you said, we're putting a huge emphasis on that each and every year. And we're going to be boots on the ground here in fall, out watching high school football games and making those connections as we kind of pick up the recruiting process. So, reach out. I mean, social media is great. Email's great. Phone call, and, we'll get it evaluated and watched for sure.
Well, thanks again, Coach. And that should do it for this week's episode of the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. Thanks for following along. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment or review, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.